Hello, how are you?
Hello, Alan. Good, how are you? Thanks for helping us organizing this. So just wondering if it's better if I
You
have my
are
camera
now,
like
yeah,
this
this is
or
better.
this is better. Great. So great. So I think we may start. Thank you, Alan. Thanks for the this organization that you helped us to having a workshop on immigration options. It's really a pleasure to having you addressing some immigration options for our Iranian community at University of Illinois, Urbana-Champaign. So as we advertise, we would like to a little bit learn more about the immigration options that our folks can know about understanding the procedures and also how a strong application could be for options like
Sure.
family-based immigration, investment, and other topics. So I'd like to, if possible, to go have an overview on your site. Then if anyone has any question, they're really welcome to write their question in the comment section. Our team will be looking at the questions.
Sounds very good.
Once you're
And
done,
my audio
we'll
is
be
okay? You
asking
can
those
hear
questions.
me okay? Okay, perfect. Well,
Yeah,
thank you
all
so
perfect.
much for having me. I appreciate it. And many thanks to everyone who's joined us on a Saturday afternoon. I'm not quite sure if the individuals who are joining us know much about my background. I thought maybe I would spend a couple of minutes talking about my background and who I am and what I do. I am Alen Takhsh. I was born in Tehran, Iran, on the day of and the year of the revolution, 22 Bahman 57. And so you're welcome. Um, uh, it's been quite a journey for my family and I to come to the United States. We were in Iran throughout the Iran-Iraq war, some of the most difficult times I can remember. And my life as an immigrant slash refugee began in 1989 when we fled to Germany. And so in Germany, it was a completely new problem that we faced, which is that the anti-foreign sentiments at the time were running very, very high. And they mistook me and my family for being Turkish because of the anti-Turkish sentiments that that country was facing at the time. And the Berlin Wall had just come down. As a matter of fact, I was there when the Berlin Wall came down. And so a lot of trials and tribulations, not to mention the lack of language, the anti-foreign sentiment, as I said, was just unbelievable. And so anyway, 3 years later, we found our way to the United States. And again, zero English, zero everything. And we built ourselves up from the ashes of our journey. So why am I telling you all this? I'm telling you all this because I want, and I say this not only to my fellow Iranians, but I say this to anyone who is facing trials and tribulations and any of my clients, that when I say I understand some of the things that you're going through, these are not just words. I have lived your journey. I have lived throughout a lot of the obstacles that I've mentioned and I'm going to refer to in my talk. Now, somehow by the grace of God, I managed to make my way to the University of Chicago, studied economics. I was supposed to be an investment banker. And as I took steps to becoming an investment banker, the universe had other plans for me. And so I ended up in law school and studied, as I said, law, and eventually became an immigration lawyer. So now I am uniquely positioned based on everything that I have witnessed and my family has witnessed, to hopefully be of service to the individuals who are joining us today, and of course our clients. When Mehrdad first approached me and said, "We'd love to have you talk about immigration," obviously the answer was unequivocally yes and immediately yes. But the trick here is, how do you break down immigration law? It's almost like you invite a doctor to come and talk to you and you say, "Okay, talk about medicine." And so it's an immensely vast topic. But what Mehrdad and I have tried to do is to at least pinpoint a couple of topics here and there that might be of value to you all. And I encourage you to submit your questions to Mehrdad and his team. And I will also be providing my email address to you all so that you can ask me questions as a follow-up to this talk. And so, Mehrdad, do you want me to just follow the outline we have articulated in the flyer, or do you want me to have you pick a certain topic and go down that road?
I think it would be just go based what we advertise in the flyer. So we about the most I would say common options, let's say, for or flows for going to the immigration procedures. We may list them and going one by one.
That sounds good.
Let's see what question would
let's do that. So a couple of general comments here. When we talk about U.S. immigration law, we're talking about individuals who are either wanting to come to the U.S. and permanently reside in the United States, and those who wish to either visit or come here and study on a temporary basis. And the former we refer to as immigrant visa type cases. The latter we refer to as non-immigrant visa matters. So immigrant equals green card usually, non-immigrant temporary basis. Those are the two big categories. Now within these two categories there are different options. Generally you have a family member that petitions for you, for example. That's called the family-based immigration path. You have a company that petitions for you. That can be both non-immigrant or immigrant in nature. You have individuals who are afraid to go back to their country. Let's say they are from Ukraine or Russia or Saudi Arabia or Syria or where have you, and they have certain reasons why they cannot go back to their country, and so they file for protection. And then you have individuals who are of means, meaning they have access to capital, they are rich, so to speak, they have access to funds, and they wish to invest in the United States in order to find a path for themselves to get a green card that way. It's an incredibly vast area. When you all want to talk to an immigration lawyer, it's my advice to you is to do a little bit of due diligence. Don't just go to that person because he or she is doing an Instagram session for you on a Saturday. Don't go to that person just because your khale or your amme told you talk to this guy. Use your head, do your due diligence, go online, do some research, look at what other people are saying about this person, and what is this person's takhassus? What are they specializing? What are they focused on? Are they strictly employment-based? Are they strictly humanitarian-based, family-based, what have you? And so I will tell you that I am not an expert. As a matter of fact, the rules of ethics for lawyers in Illinois is very specific. It forbids us actually from saying to people, yes, I'm a specialist, I'm an expert in this area. What we are supposed to say is that I focus in this area, I focus in that area, and that's about it. Um, because of the things that I mentioned to you in terms of my journey, I have an acute interest in humanitarian and family-based immigration law. Do we handle employment-based cases? Yes, but I would say my passion, my heart and soul are in the humanitarian slash family-based type of cases. Now, the family-based immigration route is an interesting one because it is subdivided in so many other categories, and you have to be careful who is applying for you at what times, at what point in time. So, for example, if you are married to a U.S. citizen, that person can petition for you and a visa is immediately available to you. So there's no wait time. However, if you are, for example, having a U.S. citizen sibling petitioning for you, the wait is somewhere between 15 to 16 years for a visa to simply become available. Now, why is that? Why is it that a lot of times you have to go to the visa bulletin board to see what type of, what cases the U.S. government is currently working on? You have to do that is because there are simply not enough visas available in that category for the mere fact that the U.S. government values certain relationships above others. And so, put simply, a relationship between a spouse and his or her wife, husband, is far more important than that of a sibling to sibling. And so the government is focusing its resources to making sure that families are reunited as quickly as possible, thus no wait time if you have a U.S. citizen spouse petitioning for you, and a wait time of 15, 16 years when you have a sibling that is petitioning for you. So that's just a very simple example as to why that is the case. Now, Mehrdad, I'm going to ask you a quick question here. I know that one of the individuals who's joined us today had submitted a question, which I thought it was a very good question in terms of family-based immigration. Do you want me to wait until later on to address that, or since I am on the family-based immigration section, to address it right now?
Okay. Let's address that in the family-based part. So just have, once we're done with that, I just popped up a question. So is the wait time, and definitely it's it depends on the number of green cards available. So what is the total number of green cards? And it's like a total number predetermined always, or it's just every year USCIS determines the number, and that includes all types of green cards, from, let's say, lottery,
exactly. So,
so each category has a cap.
So I would probably not refer to it as green card. I would just refer to it as a visa. There are congressionally mandated number of visas available for each subcategory. And to be honest with you, speaking of not being an expert, I have not memorized those numbers. So I am unable to answer that question directly, but I will tell you those are congressionally mandated numbers each year. And because of so many applications that have been filed over the years, the government simply does not have the resources or even the human capital to process all of those applications. And plus, even if they did, they just aren't enough numbers available. And so when this is a really important point that I want some of our listeners to keep in mind, because when you listen to immigration debates, one of the arguments that you hear being made is, just chain migration. Somebody comes, gets a green card, becomes a U.S. citizen and they bring their Jadde Abad, their entire village, to the United States. It simply is not true. It's literally factually incorrect. That cannot be further from the truth. If Mehrdad wants to bring his brother, yeah, he can file a petition as long as he's a U.S. citizen. He files a petition for his brother, and his brother has to wait at least 15 to 16 years for a visa to become available. When it does become available, then the National Visa Center will start processing the case. It's going to take another 3 to 6 months. After the decision is made, the decision could be that, we're going to place your case in administrative processing, which is, in my world, like a black hole. Nobody knows exactly what's happening behind closed doors. That's another 9 to 18 months. And then at that point, if your prayers are heard, you will either get the approval or not, based on whether the government thinks that you served in Artesh or Sepah or whatever the case might be. And of course, these are references to some of the Iranian specific cases. And depending on what country you're from, things may be obviously different. The second the second item that had been mentioned on the flyer is the investment route. It used to be that Iranians would be able to avail themselves of an E2 treaty investor visa. I believe it was at the time of Mossadegh that a treaty had been signed between the U.S. and Iran. I think it was like 1951, where you essentially could bring, let's say, $100,000 to $120,000 to the United States, invest in a company of your choosing, it didn't matter how many jobs you created. It was just you investing in a company of your choosing. It could be a nail salon, it could be a restaurant, it could be really anything. And as long as the company was a going business, it was growing, and you could prove that you had not merely used the E2 route to come to the United States, that it was a legitimate business, you could indefinitely remain in the United States, work, travel, all that good stuff. However, under the Trump administration, the E2 route was rescinded. So now Iranian investors are only left with the EB5. Now, I will say that the E2 is a non-immigrant visa. So it was not a path. It did not have a direct path to a green card. On the other hand, the employment-based category number 5, EB5 visa, is an immigrant visa that does lead to a green card. And that does require a substantially higher dollar amount of investment. It used to be $500K, now it's $800. And you have to create 10 jobs within 2 years. And much like its counterpart, the E2, the government very much cares about the source of funds, where the funds are coming from. And so it's an incredibly complex area of law. A number of individuals, professionals come together to put a winning case together. But generally you're looking at, depending on which country you're from, but generally you're looking at about 2.5 years or so between the time that you file and getting a green card. A lot of Iranians that I've spoken with, and quite frankly, a lot of non-Iranians, they're also, especially given our proximity to Northwestern University, I get approached a lot to discuss the employment-based category number 2, EB2 National Interest Waiver. Now, EB2 NIW is an interesting beast because the central premise is that you are not at the mercy of a family member. You're not at the mercy of another company. You are, by the way, forgive me, I'm going to tilt my camera here a little bit. As you can see, I'm trying to position myself to escape the wrath of the sunshine, even though my body needs the sunshine. I'm trying to escape the sun rays so I don't get blinded. But the employment-based category number 2, NIW, you're essentially petitioning for yourself, and that's one of the major attributes of the path to green card. And as part of that petition, you are essentially saying that the endeavor that I am proposing to you, my line of work, what I focus on, what I specialize in, has substantial merit, and it has tremendous national importance. So it is to the benefit of the United States to approve this particular application, and I am well positioned based on everything that I have achieved in my life, based on all the papers I've published, based on the fact that I've contributed to books, based on the fact that I've been interviewed. There are articles about me on, let's say, CNN, BBC, this, that, the other. I've given talks, I've traveled here and there, I've given a lot of presentations. It is in the best interest of the United States to waive the labor certification process, which is something that needs to happen when you are you are being petitioned for by a company. So that requirement is set aside because of that, of how valuable your work is to the United States. And then moving down the line, we had mentioned that there was interest in some of our listeners and viewers wanting to know a little bit about the B1, B2 tourist visas, because a lot of our friends, a lot of our family members, they have people that they have not seen back home in number of months, years, and especially in the case of U of I, you know, you're in the middle of nowhere. By the way, my nephew attends U of I, so I have great love for U of I. Not to mention the fact that my law school, UIC School of Law, is affiliated with U of I. But tourist visas are tricky. They're tricky not because they're hard. They're tricky because so much of it is outside of your control, out of your control. Why is that? The central point that you need to convey to the consular officer at the time of your interview is that I promise to go back. I promise you I'm not using this route to travel to the US and stay. I haven't seen my daughter, I haven't seen my son, I haven't, whatever the case might be, in a number of years, no months or whatever. And at that point, it becomes incredibly important for you to show strong connections to back home. What does that mean? That means these are documents proving that I have a business, I have a home, I own the home, I rent, this is my lease, I have bank accounts, I have a car, I have several cars, I have a dog, I have a cat, I have so many things that are tying me down to my country that it is inconceivable that I would just go to the US to visit and yet use it in a way to stay there permanently. And so because it doesn't, how should I say this? It doesn't take a genius or an amazing lawyer to put a winning packet together. For that reason, I don't even take those types of cases. I just give free advice. I tell people what to do. It is not your money could be spent in a better way than on a lawyer to help you with a visitor visa. That's my opinion. Essentially, you need to prove to the government that they have nothing to worry about, that you're simply coming to the US to visit and will go back. Now, lastly, and by the way, I recognize that some of the subcategories that we've listed on the flyer are simply, at first glance, very much unrelated to each other, but they're all under the umbrella of immigration law. So I hope you will forgive me for the fact that there doesn't seem to be a direct connection between them, but it is what it is. Last but not least, we had mentioned we were going to talk a little bit about U.S. citizenship. U.S. citizenship is fairly straightforward. Of course, I handle a lot of complex cases, but for the most part, the path is fairly straightforward. You're talking about wanting to show that you've been a green card holder for at least 4 years and 9 months prior to having submitted your application, that you were physically present in the United States for at least half of the last 5 years, and that at no point in time was your continuous residence in the United States severed. What does that mean? And this is a really important point, and I hope and pray that our viewers and listeners will pay really good attention to what I'm saying, because I've seen this a lot in my Iranian cases. Because it's so difficult to get a visitor visa for an Iranian, male Iranian for that especially. Women a little bit easier, older women a lot easier. But if you're a male, I've noticed it's just incredibly difficult to get visitors visas. And so what people end up doing is saying, you know what, I'm just going to go ahead and petition for my mom or dad to get a green card, because really like that gives them the best chance to quote unquote visit. That is the beginning of the problem, because the immigrant visa route is not meant for individuals who simply want to visit the United States, because you've spent now thousands of dollars in order to bring your mom or dad to the US, and your mom and dad says, okay, you know what, I'm ready to go back. It was lovely seeing you. I've been here for 3 months, 4 months. I'm going to go back. I don't like it here. Everything's foreign. You know, I want to go back. Now, the reason that's important is because when we say green card, that's actually not the name of that thing. It's legal permanent resident card, LPR status, legal permanent resident status, LPR. P for permanent, da'emi. Like, clearly you are not living in the United States permanently when you are going back and spending, let's say, months upon months upon months in Tehran or wherever. And a lot of times I get a call and caller that says, you know what, Alan, that's fine and all. I appreciate you telling me about the law, but my relative went back to Iran and she spent X number of months there and was able to return with no problem. Fine. There are some exceptions that are made at the airport by a Customs and Border Protection officer that I cannot speak to. It happens. But my job as a legal professional, as an attorney, is to tell you what the law is. That if you do that often enough and long enough, at some point you're going to end up in front of the wrong officer on the wrong day, and your green card is going to be in jeopardy. And all that hard work to get that green card is going to be for naught. Those are some of the things that I want our viewers to keep in mind. It's about, looks like it's about 12:30, so we're right on time. I'd set aside to speak for about 30 minutes in terms of some of the general thoughts that I wanted to share. And then we have that wonderful family-based immigration question that we can address a little bit later or now, whatever you think is right, Mehrdad.
Yeah, sure. So just I wrote some notes to have a summary of what we've talked. So we went through a couple of immigration options, from family-based immigration, EB-5 visa, EB-5 category for investment, and some like an asylum part, asylum application for the immigration, and also for non-immigrant visa, B1 and B2 type, and then we talked about U.S. citizenship. So, for example, for a family-based petition, that you can have petition for your wife, parents, or child, which is the wait time is pretty, a few months, or it's comparably low. Or you can petition for your sister, brother, which usually takes about 15 to 16 years to get their immigrant visa. And then for an EB5, which currently for Iranian, they have to invest about 800K and have 10 jobs with to be able to, after 2.5 years, they get their green cards. And there is another option for the immigrant visa, which usually most of the Iranian scholars are going through. That is an EB2 national interest waiver, which you do the petition for yourself, and kind of proving to the United States government that it's a benefit of the United States that they waive the petition through a company or any other types for you. And then we talked slightly about the tourist visa. That the main promise in that part is that you do promise that you will go back to your country. You have enough ties, homes, cars, business, and many other things that you can show to the officer that you will go back. And the last topic was about the U.S. citizenship, which kind of after about 4 years and 9 months at least, you would be able to file application for being a U.S. citizen. And one important part in there is that since it is basically literally called a permanent residentship, you do have to be considerably, you do have to spend a considerable number of months and years in the United States to be eligible for that. So I hope I didn't make any mistake in summarizing all this. And folks, if you have any question, please submit your question to the comment section.
That was a nice summary, Mehrdad. For the most part, correct. I will say that I have a friend who was the head of the consular processing section of Ankara, U.S. Embassy in Ankara, for a number of years. And he told me that when he was instructing his officers in terms of how to process the interviews, especially because Ankara had so many Iranian cases, he would give them anywhere between 10 to 15 minutes to spend with each applicant. So a lot of times I hear complaints from individuals who go to an interview and they say, you know what, I had so many documents that I had prepared, and the officer said hello, asked me a couple of questions, he was very mean, and then denied my family member's visa, and asked me to get up and leave, essentially. And so I want to stress the fact that a lot of the information that I am sharing are essentially best practices, what you should do. It doesn't mean that you will actually get the opportunity to utilize some of the, or rely on some of the evidence that you've brought with you, let's say, to the interview. The fact of the matter is that, especially now more than ever, the U.S. and Iran are adversaries, and they are at proxy war, essentially, against one another. And so there's no love lost between the two countries. Not the people of Iran and not the people of the United States, but the governments are simply at odds with one another. And so do what you can to give yourself the best opportunity, but also be cognizant of the fact that there are some very, very large obstacles in the way. And I will also add that this is just in addition to some of the summary that you noted, Mehrdad. When it comes to U.S. citizenship, if you are married to a U.S. citizen and applying to become a U.S. citizen, you wait 2 years and 9 months as opposed to 4 years and 9 months. So you get the benefit of essentially two less years that you have to wait to file for citizenship. And then one other important point, one last point I want to make with regard to legal permanent resident cards, LPR status, is that the law says if you are a legal permanent resident of the United States and you spend, let's say, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 months out of the country, out of the year, outside of the United States, generally that's okay. If you spend more than 1 year outside of the United States, the law presumes that you no longer wish to be a legal permanent resident of the United States. If you spend more than 6 months, but less than 1 year outside of the United States, then the government holds a rebuttable presumption that you've abandoned your LPR status. The key word here is rebuttable. That means that you can come back with evidence showing why it is that you had to spend 6 or 7 or 8 or 9 months outside of the United States. For example, I had to attend court hearings. I had to sell my property. We encountered a lot of problems. I just couldn't sell them in time. I had to get surgery, whatever the case might be. And so there are different ways that you can combat some of the, or rather this presumption that the government is making when you have spent that much time outside of the United States. And it's quite logical if you really think about it, right? Because if somebody is a legal permanent resident of Iran, let's say, what are they doing 9 months out of the year in Germany? Like, that doesn't make sense. Like, you're not a legal permanent resident of the United States unless you show me good reason why it is that you had to spend 9 months in Frankfurt, for example. It's logical. So none of the things that I guess I'm trying to say is that none of the things I've said are rocket science. It's just logical. But you have to be prepared to have the evidence to back it up. I had an Iranian case not too long ago. The couple had spent 8 months in Iran, an elderly couple, and they were going through the citizenship process, and they were able to get documents showing that there was a dispute in the family about money. Somebody had died, they had left money, and then their presence was constantly required in court, and so they just couldn't leave and come back. It took the government a little bit of time to approve their citizenship case, but ultimately they did, because it was a valid reason and they were able to show why they spent so much time there.
Thank you. Thanks, Alan. So I was wondering if we can go a little bit more depth for the family-based and EB2 and national interest waiver. I think these are the two most common ones, which mostly ultimately, I mean, for EB2 many, and ultimately for the family-based type, our Iranian flows will go through. So how are the legal steps that if I want to go for the family-based immigration visas? So what's the first steps, and what are let's
sure.
say through the forms, all those.
Essentially, whenever we're talking about a family-based case, there are two agencies that you will be dealing with. The first agency is the Department of Homeland Security. DHS, under it, has U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services, USCIS. And the importance of USCIS is, as it relates to a family-based case, is that agency is the agency that determines that a relationship exists. They're not going to just take your word for it. You have to prove, for example, that such and such person is your mother, such and such person is your father. Generally, you file Form I-130 with USCIS, and you pay the government, you pay the Department of Homeland Security $535 for them to process that application. If, for example, you are filing for your mother, you will include a copy of her biographic page of her passport, her Shenasname, English translation. You will include proof of your U.S. citizenship by way of U.S. passport / certificate of naturalization. So you file that. Now, it's a little bit, just very, very slightly different when it comes to your father. If you're filing the exact same application with your father, you also have to include marriage certificate between your father and mother, and of course you'll want that translated in English as well. But of course, everything I'm saying today is based on current law. So if you are filing something tomorrow, make sure you read up on the instructions, because from time to time the government does change the requirements. But as of January 14th, 2023 at 12:42 p.m., this is the most accurate information that I'm conveying to you. So once you file the application with USCIS, you wait about 6 to 9 months for the Department of Homeland Security to approve that petition. And once it's approved, it's going to go over to, it's going to be sent over to the National Visa Center, which is under the U.S. Department of State. Those individuals are in charge of making sure that all of your documents are in order before they schedule your interview back home, or back home in this case, either Ankara or Dubai or wherever. And so you'll get an invitation. You will proceed to complete online application DS-260. They'll ask for proof that you have the financial means to support your mom or dad, that they're not going to be a financial burden upon the United States. So you'll include an affidavit of support, an I-864 it's called, and along with your tax returns, and you will wait a few weeks, months, until your case is documentarily satisfied. At that point, the government is going to put your case in a queue to have it be interviewed by a consular officer, either in Ankara or Dubai or wherever, as we said. Once you go to the interview, there is a chance, there's a very high chance that the case is going to be placed in administrative processing, because the government wants to make sure that the applicant, a mom or dad, does not have any illicit connections to the Islamic Republic of Iran, that there are no illicit connections to Sepah or Artesh or whatever the case might be. And that can take from a few weeks to a few months to a couple of years. And at that point, you know, if it gets to be a situation where you've waited a very, very long time, you might consider federal action. So you file a lawsuit against the U.S. government, alleging that, hey, I'm a good guy, I'm a good person, I have no connections, and yet my case has been pending for God knows how many months and years. A lot of people don't go down that road because, especially Iranians, they have this mentality that they don't want to make the U.S. government angry by filing a lawsuit, which is not the case. I mean, the U.S. government is not going to get angry. They're already delaying your case. You're just asking them to please hurry up, and so that you can be reunited with your family. So that's, in a nutshell, that is what a case would look like if you were filing for a mom or a dad. The cases, other family-based cases are similar. So, for example, if you're a U.S. citizen filing on behalf of your fiance, similar concept. You have the DHS, you have the National Visa Center. but the forms are, of course, are a little bit different. The supporting documents are a little bit different as well.
Two questions on that. So you mentioned you will be invited. So does the presence of the person who is a U.S. citizen also
no,
require
it is not a requirement for that
family
person
member
to appear for the interview. We just make sure that the applicant, so in the example that I gave, the mom or the dad has all of the documents with him or her when they go for the interview.
Mm-hmm. And one other thing that I've seen from some people that they're asking usually in the conversation we have, so is this type of application a right for a person? So if I'm a U.S. citizen, it's my right to have my parents or like have a immigrant visa, or it's just a privilege that the United States government is giving to a person? Having said this, I mean, if it's my right, then it's something that I can appeal for any like refusal easier. But it's a privilege. It's just something that the United States government is giving to me.
Yeah,
I think these two like
that's a really
concepts are quite
interesting
different
question, and I've never really quite thought about it in those terms, but thank you for putting it that way. I've never thought of it as a right, because every single day that I come to the office, I deal with so many interesting obstacles that my clients face, that the fact that some people think of it as a right has never even crossed my mind. Like, for me, it's a privilege. It's a privilege. It is your right to be reunited with your family, but whether the government will recognize it as such is a completely different point, because the government has in its mind every right to exclude somebody if they believe, for example, that they are going to be a financial burden upon the United States, or if they think that the military service that they served in Iran was really not the regular military service, it was actually with Sepah. Sometimes we see documents where the person, he clearly served with Artesh, which was the regular military, but then Sepah is the one that signed his Artesh documents. So now the government is denying the visa based on the fact that basically this organization that the government thinks is a terrorist organization signed the document. So it's a really interesting point that you make, Mehrdad. I would say that the applicant has every right to be reunited with his or her family, and then the government has every right to exclude people it thinks are going to harm it. So both people are approaching the exact same problem with the vantage point, like, this is my right. And then you have a lot of fighting that happens to see who gets the last laugh.
Gotcha. Thank you. Thanks for clarifying that. And do you mind if we get to the question we had?
Yeah, no problem.
For this family
I am going to pull up the question real quick because I failed to print it in front of me, or have it in front of me. So if you just bear with me for 1 second, I'm going to pull it up. One of our attendees slash viewers had submitted a question prior to the session, and I thought it was a good one. Okay. Yeah, actually, if you can read it for the audience, that would be excellent.
I can read it for the audience. Sure. So we had a question submitted that a U.S. citizen is trying to apply for the green card for her mom. So basically, it looks that there are two paths that she's considering for this application. and she wants to know about the risk and the approximate wait time and any recommendation that you might have for this. So her mom is currently visiting the United States with the visitor visa, and she does have a 6-month visa right now. There are things that could be done in her application. One is that she submit an I-35 I-130 form through the USCIS, and have her mom wait for the decision that USCIS can do while she's in the United States. And the other one is that, that must be also accompanied with I-485, which I believe it's a change of status for. So this is one path, and the other one is that the application to be gone through the embassy, the regular one that you have, you file and then you wait for an invitation, you go to the embassy. So which one do you recommend, and what are both of this possible? First of all, what would you recommend, and how would you think about the application time?
This is one of my favorite fact patterns because it has so many different legal concepts contained in it, and it's not an easy answer. And so I will try to dissect it a little bit, and hopefully our viewers and attendees will walk away with some valuable information. So remember, first and foremost, the mother in this example is in the United States because she was able to convince somebody at the consulate that she wants to come and only visit the United States. And so that officer believed this woman, and he or she gave a visa to this mother, and she was able to enter the United States. She has a non-immigrant status. And so if the daughter were to turn around and file a petition on behalf of her mother, the US government could question the timing of everything, because they would say, wait a second, you told us a few months ago that you just wanted to visit. We give you a visa, you enter the US, and your daughter turns around and files an I-130, an I-485, I-765, I-131, I-864, I-693, all of the change of status application, all packed together a few months later. So that could pose an issue because of what we call a preconceived intent. Basically, what was your intention at the time that, what was your true intention at the time that you appeared for your consular interview? However, and this is a very important point, life change happens. Change is the one thing that is constant in life. And so I may have gone to the interview and I may have said, please allow me to visit my daughter. It's been many, many years, many, many months since I've seen her. I entered the United States and I changed my mind. Circumstances change. So for example, let me give you a very simple example. I entered the US in February of 2020, and on March 13th, 2020, there's a proclamation that says, you know what, COVID is here, we're shutting down. Clearly, a few months ago, I just wanted to visit her, but now I don't know when I'm going to see her next. I'm afraid to go and live by myself in Iran, you know, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I've now changed my mind. So the daughter, the U.S. citizen daughter, can now petition for her mother based on changed circumstances. You provide a statement as part of the application that explains why it is that you changed your mind. However, if, and I get this question all the time, sir, can I get a visa, enter the US on a tourist visa, come here, and then have my US citizen son or daughter file for me? The answer is no, you can't. That's called immigration fraud. And some people might get away with it. Maybe the government may not, connect the dots, and you might get away with it. Everything will be fine. But it's still against the law, and we advise against it. You shouldn't do that, because you never want to play poker or chess against the U.S. government. At some point, you're going to lose. In this example, if the person can show why the circumstances have changed, then I would say it makes a hell of a lot more sense to file the petition while the mother is in the United States. She's here. She's already with the daughter. She's going to get her green card in about 10 or 11 months. That's not a guarantee, but 80% of, actually higher percentage, maybe 85, 90% of our cases, the mom or dad gets the green card in 10 or 11 months. We're lucky if it takes 10 or 11 months for the I-130 alone to be approved if the person is outside of the United States. So we're talking a difference of probably 10 or 11 months versus 2.5 years, depending on all of the problems that Iranian applicants are having if they were to go through consular processing. I hope I answered the question, but if there are any sub-questions that you'd like to ask me about it, I'm happy to address them as well.
I think that from my understanding from the question, I believe we addressed all of it. Yeah, that's it. So before going to the, I think that we might not be able to cover about, there's not too much about the tourist visa to go over. Before going to the EB2 and IW in depth, we have a question about the tourist visa. So one is, you said that there should be a good promise that you will go back to your country. That's like the main concept behind this tourist visa. And the other one that you mentioned was about the difficulty of the mothers versus the fathers, which usually it's been the case that the father and mother have different processing time, and maybe they've not been given the visa simultaneously. So one was asking that, is there a choice that you have each of them to a different embassies so that there are different officers considering them simultaneously? There is a chance that they do not have access to the information of the others. My short answer is the black box.
Yeah, generally the government is not keen on applicants forum shopping, meaning you shop around and you say, okay, if I go here, the wait times are less, the chances are better. Is not keen on that. As a matter of fact, if I were to want my case to be heard in a different venue, in a different forum, I have to, generally speaking, show that I have some kind of connection to that embassy, that country, that embassy, especially as it relates to the immigrant visa cases. And so we are at the mercy of the U.S. government when it comes to assigning these interviews. And even if you do go to the interview and you are denied, that denial is discretionary. So there's no appeal process involved in that at all. And so that's yet another reason why, going back to the earlier example, that I was saying that if you have a choice between mom being already here and you petitioning for her versus mom going back and consular processing, the reasons would have to be very, very, very strong for me to say, oh yeah, don't worry about it, go back. Because if the whole point is for them to be reunited as soon as possible, and it can be shown that at no point in time did the applicant lie to the U.S. government, that she truly wanted to simply visit, now circumstances have changed, then it's a no-brainer. It's a no-brainer in my book. You absolutely do go down the road of adjustment of status and having the U.S. citizen daughter or son petitioning for the mother. Going back to the question about the visitor visa, very much discretionary, no appeal process. You have but a few minutes with the officer, and you have two countries that are essentially at war with each other. And within the context of this animosity between these two countries, you're supposed to convince them that you have no connections to the government. The government will scrutinize your employment. The government will scrutinize your military service. And if they are borderline, yes or no, they will most certainly go the negative route and deny your application. So you are at the and it's don't think that it's easy for me to say all of these things, because it's painful, because I have a lot of clients that I talk to. These are good human beings, good people. They just want to come here, they want to visit, and they will go back. But unfortunately, the environment, the circumstances are such that it's very difficult to convince the U.S. government that they should trust the applicant in light of where they are coming from.
So thanks for that, and let's, if possible, go to the EB2 and IW. And how are the applications, procedures?
Yeah, so
and,
the EB2 and IW route is one of my favorite types of petitions, because you are afforded the opportunity to take control over your life based on what you have accomplished by yourself. Again, you're not at the mercy of a family member, and you're not at the mercy of a company, and you're not claiming that you are afraid to go back to your country. You're simply saying, this is who I am, this is what I've accomplished in my life, these are my publications, these are my books, these are my interviews, these are my presentations, these are my awards, and look at what it is that I have focused my career on. If you give me a chance, I promise you that I will make life for U.S. citizens and U.S. residents a lot better. It is in your best interest to please allow me to become a legal permanent resident of the United States. That essentially, what I just said, is the heart and soul of an NIW application. You file the I-140, again with the Department of Homeland Security, and you present as much evidence as possible. Now, if your case is strong enough, then I advise my clients to go ahead and also file the I-485 green card application along with the employment authorization, along with the travel document, simultaneously, or rather concurrently. In some situations where I feel that the case is borderline, I want to play it a little bit safer. I have the I-140 filed first, and I wait for that to be approved. Only then do I turn around and file the I-485 along with all the other forms, including the approval notice, the I-140 approval notice. And as of just a couple of days ago, literally, I think it was either yesterday or 2 days ago, the U.S. government is now allowing for premium processing all across the board. So all previously filed NIWs, including those that are being filed now. So for an extra fee of $2,500, the government, excuse me, is making a promise to you that they will adjudicate your case in a few calendar days, Right now, I'm drawing a blank. I believe it's 30 or 45 calendar days that they will make a decision on your I-140. I'm sorry, I believe it's even 15 calendar days, because once, if they issue a request for evidence, then you get an additional 30 days, I believe. Sometimes it's difficult to keep track of the number, so I apologize. But basically, in a matter of month and a half, you should know the outcome of your I-140. At that point, you can then turn around and file the I-485, which is the green card application, the I-765, which is work authorization application, the I-131, advanced parole, travel authorization, the I-693, which is the medical examination report. And remember, you have to be vaccinated. You cannot not be vaccinated for the COVID-19 virus. You file all of that with U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services. And right now, they are moving fairly quickly. Work and travel authorization applications are being approved within 5 to 7 months. Green card applications, roughly 10, 11 months. And the Biden administration has made it somewhat easier for my clients pursuing NIW. So if you are an NIW candidate you have not had your accomplishments, your endeavors evaluated by a professional to see what the chances of success would be, I would highly recommend that you speak to a professional you trust. This is not a marketing ploy. It doesn't have to be me. So whoever you trust, as long as they know what they're talking about and all that good stuff, just have them evaluate your chances and see if it would make sense for you to avail yourself of that option.
About the I-140, what are the decision criteria usually that makes an application
a lot of
strong enough?
Objective evidence. So, for example, by the way, when we say subjective versus objective, subjective means from my vantage point, that this is evidence from my viewpoint, this is evidence that I am providing based on my opinions. Objective evidence, on the other hand, is different because you're relying on third parties in order to support whatever it is that you're saying about yourself. So letters of commendation, letters of support from colleagues, professors, industry leaders is an important aspect of an NIW EB2 application. Now, when it comes to letters of support, some individuals go to a professor and say, can you please write a letter? And the professor says, no problem. Most of the time, however, the professor, I'm just using a professor as an example, is incredibly busy. They have a million things going on. And so they say, okay, write the letter for me and I will go ahead and review it, put it in my own words, and then sign it. That's okay too, because the presumption is that the professor is not going to sign something that they do not agree with, especially if they're putting it on the university letterhead. They're talking about their background, their accomplishments, how they came to know the applicant, why they believe that the proposed endeavor by the applicant has substantial merit, substance, it's important, it has value, and why it is of such national importance. And so when it comes to the national importance part, we include a lot of statistics and data, news articles talking about, like, again, I'll give you a very simple example. Pancreatic cancer. If you have an applicant that has spent most of her life focusing on cancer research, specifically pancreatic cancer, I mean, there's no more deadly cancer than the pancreatic cancer right now. And so you pull up tons of articles talking about why this disease is so devastating and why it is, if we give this applicant the chance to push her research forward, how the United States is going to benefit, how we as a society are going to be propelled forward. And then, of course, the second prong being that the applicant is well positioned to advance this project, this research. That this is not a first-year medical student. This is somebody who has a PhD. This is a person who has a master's, 2 masters. This is somebody who has 5 articles, has given presentations, 9 presentations in 2 different countries. She's being invited left and right to speak at different conferences, things like that. And then last but not least, the third prong, that it would it would be beneficial to the United States to waive the labor certification. Really, that we can reuse some of the evidence that we've used under prong number 1. And by the time we're done, we're talking about, packets that are, 200-300 pages long. So we try very hard to make the argument that this is a special person, that they deserve a chance, because if we give them a chance and they succeed, the United States is going to be propelled forward in a positive direction. And right now, I have not had a single NIW case that was rejected. I've been doing this line of work for over 10 years. And it's not because I'm a great lawyer. It's not. I'm an okay lawyer. But the reason for that is I don't take every case. We go through an evaluation process to see what are the chances. I like a case that has at least a 50% chance of success. And when I start working on it, as long as it's about 50, 51, 52%, that's wonderful. I work towards getting that number higher and higher as we gather more evidence. As long as I'm between 70 and 80% chance of success, I feel good about filing. I've generally never gone above 80% because that 20%, anything can happen. So as long as I'm between 50 and 80%, I feel good.
Great, thank you. And one other question was, you said recently I-40 could be done in premium processing. What about the second step, which is the change of the status from I-485, I believe,
no,
if I'm not mistaken? Is that also premium processing possible for it?
10, 11 months.
So how long usually
I mean,
does it take?
those are averages. It could be 6 months, it could be a year and a half, but about 10 to 12 months, let's say.
And just regarding that, you said 2,500 is the premium processing cost, but that should be added to the some other costs that I-40 itself has.
The change of status is 1,000. So the filing fee for the I-485 is 1,225, and the I-140. Again, I was drawing a blank. That's why you saw me looking to my right, because I had to Google to remind myself what the fee for the I-140 was. It's 700. So 700 for the I-140, and then you have 1,225 for the I-485, plus the 2,500, which is premium processing. If you want to avail yourself of that, yeah.
And if you have any wife or children, that would be a different case for the change of it. I mean, the different fee for
roughly 1,200, yeah, 1,225. So each
the,
application would be 1,225.
That's purpose. Yeah. And I do not see any new question even sent directly to us or in the chat. Yes, that's it. I believe if you have anything added, we'd be glad also to learn more about your law company. So as just a brief overview, that how people approach you and what are usually the services and what are your procedures.
Sure.
You have evaluation.
So
Any
the name of the law
information
firm is
valuable
Takhsh
to our
Law
audience.
PC, Professional Corporation. We're located in Evanston, Illinois, not too far from Northwestern University. We generally have individuals schedule consultations. We charge for that. However, if one of the listeners or attendees wants to reach out to me, make sure that they mention this talk. I would be more than happy to waive the $200 consultation fee, just as an added benefit of having their situation evaluated. They can follow us on Facebook. Again, that's Takhsh, Takhsh, Law PC. Also on Instagram at IMI Counsel. That's at IMMI COUNSEL. By the way, I'll finish with an interesting fact about my last name. So we're Assyrian Armenian from Iran, but my last name is as Persian as they come, Takhsh, which what a lot of people may not know. It's from the Shahnameh. The Rostam's horse was the Rakhsh, if you remember, and his Tir Kaman was Takhsh. And so Takhsh is from the Shahnameh, the Epic of Kings, Ferdowsi, and very proud to bear that name. It's been a pleasure speaking with you all today.
Thank you. Thank you. We really appreciate your time, and it's been a pleasure also to have information about these topics from you. Thank you from audiences. We will also have your Instagram ID, Facebook ID, and the websites in the description of the post that we will have. And also we'll save this Zoom on our Instagram page so people can also have a review of our talk later on. And thanks again,
take care, guys.
We hope you also have a great weekend. Thank you. Bye.